Hi, I'm Maria Kinnan. I'm staff at Fearzine magazine, and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
It's the Scene World podcast. I'm AJ. That's Jurg over there. In a minute, we'll be talking with Taylor Lorenz, independent journalist, previously of the New York Times, and she's got a podcast out and a blog on Substack, which is awesome. Before we get to that, eagle-eyed viewers might notice that the things behind me are exactly as they were in the podcast. The podcast was on Monday. It's now on Thursday. But nothing's been turned off because if you watch the podcast, maybe roughly halfway through, I begin to notice that something's not quite right. And shortly after the podcast, and we'll overlay a picture here. I'll send you a picture to overlay. Shortly, several hours after the podcast, I found myself in the hospital getting prepared for emergency appendix surgery because my appendix decided during the podcast that it did not want to be inside me anymore.
Ooh.
So that is my...
And you survived.
Yes, and that is my dedication to this podcast and this medium and to our guest, in that I fought through an arguing appendix to do a podcast and be involved in a podcast. So,
what you didn't mention, that Taylor Lorenz is actually specializing in the tech field, especially Gen Z, TikTok and stuff.
Yes, correct.
So she's not just a former
that's right.
Mainstream media journalist, but also she's specializing on such fields.
Yeah, I'm also on some pretty strong pain medicine, so forgive me if things slip my mind during this intro.
Oh, no problem.
I am totally sober for the interview.
Just saying. It is tech related.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So,
just want to say,
before we get to her, and we won't spend too much time on that because it's a really good interview. I would say, honestly, we've done 220-ish of these, including ones that haven't come out yet, and this is probably in my top 7 probably.
Ooh. Despite you were like, why would she even talk to us when I said she will talk to us?
Yeah, I was like, she's kind of like that's I wasn't sure exactly how it fit into our wheelhouse. First of all, why she would want to talk to us, but then once we got talking, it was a good discussion and covered things that I am personally. It's a confluence of it's technology, it's journalism, it's all the things that kind of are part of all the different aspects of my kind of history in life, because this is stuff that I've been writing for years. I've done journalism. I've been a journalist for a while, and kind of fell out of that for a bit, and getting to talk about that kind of stuff within the context of where things are in society today and what's going on in the world and whatnot. That's the kind of thing that I do love talking about, that we don't get to talk about very much on this because that's not, doesn't work within who we normally talk to. So it was nice getting to kind of get into that stuff. So yeah, I really liked the interview and the podcast. So yeah.
Nice, glad to hear it.
It was worth many hours of uncomfort or discomfort in the hospital following.
Well,
I'd also like to give a shout out to my nurses, Pam and Annette, my tech, Chloe, and my doctors, Dr. Bandy and Kyle Mao, the physician
for not
assistant,
making you die.
Who were awesome, and got me through some really crap times, and who might be watching this because I did tell them.
Ooh, yeah.
So,
well, Taylor Lorenz.
Off to the University
Lorenz,
of Maryland Medical Group at Easton.
Well, Taylor Lorenz came into the picture for me because she's doing the Power User podcast, and when I was listening to them, I was like, hey, you can improve here and there, and perhaps do something about the audio of your guests here and there. And she was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Thank you for telling me. So I can improve my podcast for the future. So I didn't even know who she was, because you know me, I just, when I have feedback or a bug report or whatever, or improvements or suggestions, I'd simply email people. I never look them up and do some research. Only afterwards I think, oh my God, she's actually a big shot in the journalism tech field. And I was like, okay, nice. So this is actually how it happened. Anyway, news.
Yes, news. I'll start this one. I've only got one,
Okay.
and I think this has been kind of bubbling on the horizon for a bit. I think it's finally time we need to talk about
Okay.
Commodore, and specifically the purchase of Commodore by Chris Simpson, or Prefractic, as he is known on YouTube. So it looks like Commodore, the brand, has been purchased by Chris Simpson, Prefractic, angel investors, and we've got, and on the board, like people returning in official roles: Bill Hurd, Michael Tomchek, David Pleasance, Jerry Ellsworth.
But she was never part of Commodore.
No, but she is a tech advisor.
Right.
David Pleasance is legacy and heritage advisor. Michael Tomchek is a senior advisor. Bill Hurd is a technical advisor and shareholder. Actor and comedian Thomas Middleditch of Silicon Valley has joined as the chief creative officer. This is potentially really, really good news. I've also heard, and I don't see it listed here in the thing that I'm looking at, that Jens Schoenfeld is also involved. Which, again, I mean, nothing. It's one of the big issues that we've had.
I highly doubt that, because he and Jerry Ellsworth hate each other.
But they're not.
Sure.
They don't have to be involved. But it's not like they are working together on a thing. It's like they are both involved in something that is right. But it's not like you wouldn't like. Okay, yeah, I don't necessarily get along with this other person, but that wouldn't prevent you from working at a company together. Maybe on a project together, but
yeah, that's actually the key,
right?
Because that Commodore 1 project they did together didn't really work out.
Right. And
either of them had hope.
And again, most of these people are advisors. They're not like main things. But one of the big issues that has been with Commodore is that a lot of people have kind of tried to. We saw it with the pet phone in Italy that came out. People can grab onto the name and just do what they want with it. Sometimes, at other times, the names and property are held down so hard, such as with the Amiga, and that's still a whole thing. Like the Amiga isn't part of this, I don't believe, where it makes it difficult to do new things with it.
Amiga is owned by other people.
Right. So this is potentially really good for. I mean, we could potentially be seeing your individual computers. What is that called? Oh my God. The individual Jens Schoenfeld, his 64.
They reloaded.
Yes. Yeah, the 64 reloaded. I'm fuzzy brain. I've got yeah. We could be seeing this as like an official Commodore product now, which is great. We could be seeing, a Computes Gazette was coming back. They delayed their relaunch to coincide with this.
For 2-3 months, actually.
Right. There's a licensing system in the works. Community-created games and hardware can apply to carry the Commodore name. There's merchandise in development. There's 2 new games in production. There's a new device already in development. This is this is good stuff. I'd love to be, and as much as I'd love to be involved with it, I don't really know what the hell I would contribute
Well,
to
we
any of
at
this.
Scene World probably could contribute in one way or another. I mean, we have access to some stuff, to some people, to some knowledge, to some historical stuff. Well, it depends.
Well, the company is hiring. They're looking for artists, developers, social media people, anyone that owns rights to old game IPs. There's also potentially a crowd equity option in the future. So that's like
But
owning
is it paid or is it freelance?
What do you mean?
I mean,
I
is
think
it paid work?
I think it's paid.
Hard to believe.
If they're hiring, that doesn't make it. Saying you're hiring doesn't make it sound like it's a volunteer position. If you're, you're getting something out of it, obviously.
Oh, right. Wow.
If you want to contribute financially, you have to be an accredited investor. But supporters can help by spreading the word, which is what I'm doing right now.
I mean, I could apply then.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for a job.
It's good people that, for a long time, it's been kind of like this company, this mega conglomerate has their fingers in this. And we talked to, part of what we talked to Taylor about in this podcast is how big companies are kind of squashing game development. How these like big, giant, megalithic companies are buying everybody up, and while people often blame DEI or wokeness or whatever for games being sucky, it's really just that these big companies are not putting the resources into it because they want to make money. And that's what you've had a lot with stuff like Commodore, where like the names are owned by these random little companies that are just holding everything and meeting it out to who they feel like they can get the most out of. Right. But to have actual good people like again, like Chris Simpson, who is, the guy's got a history, he's got a pedigree in this. He's not like some wacko on the edge that is gonna, that's gonna take Commodore and shit all over it to make a buck. It's not about that. It's about doing something with it and making it so that people can do something with it again. Right. It's not just held by somebody.
Not just put a label on it and call it a device of Commodore.
Right. This is right. It's really, really good news, basically, for the Commodore community.
Interestingly, he used the PC Commodore as a positive example.
Yeah. Well, so from an aspect of there's knockoffs, right? There was the Webbit. That was the first one, the Commodore 64 Webbit.
But that wasn't a knockoff. That was actually done by Tulip, who actually owned the license at that time.
Right.
But they went bankrupt.
Right, but it's not. It wasn't a Commodore 64. It wasn't. It was a laptop in a desktop case. It was a shitty computer at the time.
With an emulator.
With an emulator, yes. But it was just kind of one of these things that they put out that was like the thing that already existed, and we're going to stick a name on it and call it a Commodore.
And put an emulator on it.
Right. That the 64 PC thing was not advertised as like a Commodore 64 or whatever. It was, people knew what they were getting, and it was engineered to be that. It looked like a 64, but it wasn't like some other random thing that's just got a Commodore name on it. This was
overpriced.
Right. This was a PC that was styled on the 64, and it was a good product for what it was. It wasn't advertised as something else.
Actually, people liked a lot this Commodore OS, which is like a Linux system.
Yeah, right. And the people that were doing it were good people. It's a shame that the main guy passed away, because that's what kind of like ended everything.
Right.
But yeah, so that was a good thing I saw for Commodore, because it got the name out there again. It created a product, an actual product that wasn't just some other thing with a brand slapped on it.
Right.
That's it's good because it protects the brand from other people that would make some bullshit Android phone and call it a Commodore.
Yeah, you're actually right. The guy who passed away, which was the CEO, had actually a good reputation.
Right.
for
And
doing the right things.
yeah, it protects the name from being misused, and it
Right.
allows new products to come into the market that are properly vetted and approved and honor the whole Commodore thing.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's good. I would love to. Hey, guys, we've done over 200 episodes of this podcast. Send us an email. Come on.
Like and subscribe if you watch this on YouTube.
No, I'm talking to the people that own Commodore right now.
Ah, yeah.
Dude, we've done this a lot. We've had a lot of people on here. Come on over.
We had a lot of people on here that people told us we wouldn't get on here, but we spoke to them anyway.
We had Commodore. We had Commodore from Italy on here. Commodore from America can come on here too, please.
Right.
Please.
The official.
Yes,
No.
the real ones, the ones we want to talk to.
Right. Well,
so that's my.
Actually, I'm working on that with the help of David Pleasance. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's part of it, so.
Give it time. Give it time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, that's my news. What you got?
Well, plenty. So the independent news portal for Retro Dodo, is actually having an uncertain future because YouTube income actually declined to 90%. So now, to help them survive, you can actually become a premium member and of Retro Dodo. And as a paid member, what do you get? You get removal of all advertising on the homepage, so you can read distraction free. Unlock of locked premium content, which we upload bi-weekly and often offer early access to YouTube videos. Access to our exclusive collectible club podcast about retro collecting. Access to exclusive deals from our partners and favorite brands. Downloadable versions of both of our handheld history books. Physical welcome kit packed with stickers, coasters, and letters from our founders. Exclusive Retro Dodo GB-001 t-shirts. Exclusive invites for our yearly Retro Dodo event in the UK. Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you want to help, become a member and help them.
All right.
Yeah. Other than that, Bitmap Bureau revealed the Terminator 2D No Fate exclusive set of 3 art cards. So we will link to that. You live in the EU or UK, you can sign a petition for Stop Killing Games. And that goes till the end of July. What is that? That means that EU countries or UK people who buy games actually buy the games or the license for the game, where the publisher has to have a plan for keeping the game playable.
We're talking about, and we've talked about this before, where a game kind of relies on the server side of like the company servers to run it. And so once the company decides I'm not supporting this game anymore, the game doesn't work. And this goes back also to the whole, is buying something owning it anymore?
Yeah.
And like you just said, you're not really buying the game, you're buying the license to play the game.
Yeah. Well, it depends. If you buy something from Steam, that's the way it is. But if you buy something from GOG, good old games, you're actually buying an offline installer.
Right.
So you actually own a
You own the
copy
game, yes.
of the game.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it all started with Ubisoft shutting down The Crew,
Right.
which could be played as single player. I know it because I was one of them.
Right. But
But
they're also, a
even
lot of these companies also go through efforts to stop people from repairing the games by themselves, by setting up their own servers or trying to do something to continue it on after the company has cut off support for it.
and then and then you have positive examples, like surprisingly EA, which put a forward to the domains of Command and Conquer. So you are forwarded if you go to the old server address to the new community-driven servers. That's
Right.
actually a surprise, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but anyway, so it started with The Crew, where you could play single, but you always had to be connected to a server, and when they shut down the server, you could no longer play the game.
Right.
Despite, because the game is from 2014, I actually have a physical copy of the game on DVD. But
Right.
I can't play the game because despite I have the game data, the server isn't there anymore. And so for the EU and UK, they want to make a law that developers have to make a plan for how to get the game still working after the game is no longer on the market.
Yeah. One of the interesting arguments I saw by the developers against it was that the servers required to run the back ends of these games would be too much for a consumer system to handle. But the argument against that is that, by the time they shut down these systems, like, computer technology will have increased so much that, like, you can run these servers in an emulator on your modern machine.
Right.
It's nothing. You're talking about, okay, this needed a supercomputer 20 years ago. Now you've shut down the server, and, like, my laptop can do this in a window. Like, it's silly.
And another argument against it by Pirate Software, for example, was that if you have only 5 people on a self-hosted server with your friends, you won't have the same experience compared to thousands of people when the game was still alive in its original time and day. But that's bullshit. It's not about that. It's about preservation.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And they've got, and this is the petition. They want to pass 100,000 signatures, and currently they've got over 1 million. So they've got 1,024,180.
Are you talking about the EU one or the UK one?
I'm talking about the EU. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is the UK petition. Yeah.
Yeah, but the EU one would be more interesting actually.
Okay, let's see what the EU one.
It's
EU one says.
For the whole continent, not just for one country. It's for the whole.
So the
European
UK
Union.
one's doing pretty dang good.
Yeah.
So they are looking for, the EU one is looking for a 1 million goal, and they also have 1,024,000.
Oh,
same number.
Okay, good.
So yeah, that's pretty solid. And they're currently working on their overdrive goals. So I mean, yeah, if you're an EU citizen, sign the thing, because then laws get put forward that can be passed to preserve this stuff, which is important.
We covered this topic so often with
a few
guests.
times. Yeah. It comes down it also comes down almost into the right to repair thing. You know,
Right.
like because again, if back in the day, back in the 80s, early 90s, I'd get a piece of software for that thing, the C64, and it wouldn't work. And that's the only thing. You're not getting updates. That disk in your hand is all you got. If it doesn't work, you hit run stop and you fix it. You list the program and you fix it, and you move on. And you can't do that with things today. You don't have that ability.
But that would only work sometimes. Most
not all the
software
time.
wouldn't be so
Not all the
basic
time,
anymore.
but sometimes you could do that. And a lot of times, if there was something like that, it would be in a magazine. This is how you fix it.
Right.
It would be somewhere. In fact, I've had software that came with a little like a piece of paper in there saying like there's a bug, to fix it, do this. And it tells you what to do when you open the box. But but your right to do that with software these days just doesn't exist. You're not supposed to touch any of that stuff. It falls into even bigger, like the whole. It falls within the philosophy of, does buying equal ownership, and
right.
And if buying doesn't equal ownership, then is piracy actually theft? And like there's a lot of stuff like that this falls into that really would be nice to figure out, because nobody knows anything, because that's just the world that we're in. But yeah.
Right.
Very cool.
Good point. Anyway, other news. There is an upcoming Indiegogo crowdfunding.
Yeah.
One
to buy some lozenges for Jörg.
Some cough medicine. Yeah. I mean, the coughing mostly happens in the evening, which is unfortunately because that's when we record this stuff here. Anyway, there is a new Indiegogo crowdfunding coming up. 1x Sugar. And 1x Sugar is the first dual screen transforming handheld. So you can fold it. It's like 3 handhelds in one.
Huh.
Yeah.
The first dual screen transforming handheld.
Exactly.
That's
yes. But what did you say? Because you were.
I said, let me pull it up and take a look at this. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an Android console, high performance, by 1X Player. Powered
not
Snapdragon
an unknown
G3.
Not an unknown company.
Yeah, 8-core Cryo CPU, Adreno A32 GPU with ray tracing, Wi-Fi 7. There's a lot of options for it. That's quite interesting. It looks like kind of like it builds on the Switch has the ability to kind of like be reconfigured, right? I don't have a Switch, so the Nintendo Switch can kind of be reconfigured like that. It's got like, you can take the controller bits off the ends and change them around, right?
Yeah, you could.
But not
on the console.
No.
But you can use the controllers separately.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, and it kind of looks like it's taking sort of that, because you've got the controller parts of it that kind of come off, but you can then reconfigure the screen parts as well.
Right, and the Switch 2 controllers actually even have a mouse mode.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, so they're looking for they haven't started yet. They haven't.
Yeah, I mean, I will send you the
I'm looking at the Indiegogo thing right now.
But you already are.
Yeah, okay. I don't see like a tally, like how it's doing. So has it started yet?
It hasn't started yet.
No, it hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a place to keep us updated, so we can find out exactly how much they're looking to make, or to get this thing going.
Yeah.
We can follow the campaign along. That's interesting.
Definitely.
And if you sign up for
Well,
it, you can
they
save
are also
30%.
advertising. Yeah, exactly. You can save 30% if
Yeah.
you sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah. That's cool.
Something to cut out, by the way. But I just read the latest update from the Dream 64 book from Chris Wilkins, and he writes that it's printed in Turkey. And it will take a couple of weeks to get back to me in the UK. So this is how we are. This is how we are going now. UK book publisher is now printing in Turkey because it's cheaper than printing in UK directly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This will be my first book printed in Turkey then.
Well, yeah. That you know of.
That you know of. Oh my god. Printed in Turkey.
Yeah.
All
right. Well,
I always thought as a book publisher in UK, you have your connections to printing companies and stuff. And
generally, yes. Yeah.
I mean, hey,
why would we cut that part out? That's relevant to things that we've discussed. We've talked about the book.
Okay.
And that was an official statement from Chris Wilkins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Books has been dispatched from the printers. That's what the update is called. In Turkey. Yeah. So, no shit. The printers are in Turkey.
Well, that's hey, I mean, if that's where it's getting done, then that's where it's getting done.
I mean, I had Polytronic,
right?
Polytronic, which was a magazine from Australia. They were handling, shipping, printing, everything done from Singapore.
Yeah, I mean that's it happens.
Exactly, and so I was like, the postman was like, "Oh, from Singapore, that's special." Yeah, well, so the printing abroad is cheaper, including the shipping and customs, than printing it locally.
Yeah.
Now you may imagine how much is the printing then? If it's still cheaper than printing it locally, oh my god. Yeah. Well, other news. The German magazine Load issue 11 can be now bought. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, for example, from the Amiga shop. Yeah, we will link to that.
AmigaShop.eu?
AmigaShop.org.
Oh, .org. Okay, I thought it was. I thought it was .eu for some reason.
No.
Wonder why I thought that. Well, maybe it's AmigaStore.eu.
But that's a different store.
Yeah. My brain's just conflating them.
Yeah. There are different stores called Amiga. Yeah. AmigaShop.org is actually part of the publishing company APC TCP, and that is actually Amiga Future from Andreas Mager in Germany.
Yeah. All right. They're a big name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is Load magazine, which is I guess that's C64 related.
Yes.
Or not.
Not only,
what I'm
but
seeing here,
but retro in general.
Yeah, number 11 is Micro Expander, Dimension 68,000, IBM System 23, Data Master. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there. IBM terminals, Microvax 2000.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
All right. So the news before the last one, Hui Games, who's actually run by Rob Husen. So
Houston, yeah.
yeah, so Hui Games is actually the successor company of Houston Software,
Yes.
and they are working on a new game called Hyper Sentinel Fusion, which is Paratroid, Iridium, and Hades combined in one game.
Okay. That's a lot of games in one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, so I guess it's like putting what's good about those old classics and mangle them into one game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can kickstart it. They are asking for 32,000 euros and have 29 days to go.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, the last news, which is actually pretty sad. Because we spoke to John Romero.
Yeah, we did.
Last year.
And Brenda Romero the year before that.
Exactly. And his new game has been cancelled.
Oh.
Yeah.
No way.
Because the publisher backed out.
Publisher backing out of John Romero seems like bad advice or a bad business move.
I know. It has to do with the massive layoffs of Microsoft and shutting down companies and putting games on game projects on ice. And so it has to do with that. It's related to that. Yeah.
Thanks, Donald Trump.
Is that so?
I mean, anything that, if the economy is shitty and people are being laid off from companies, there's one guy in charge right now. I mean, 10 years ago, we'd be hearing, thanks, Obama, for anything similar. So, I mean, it's only fitting that we do a thanks, Trump.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, it wasn't as bad as now.
Well, no, that's the point. 10 years ago, we had a small economic recession that they complained about, the Great Depression of 2009, and Obama was going to rule to destroy the economy.
I know.
And now we're in.
I remember because in this year 2009, in 2008, I got my first job. And I visited you in 2008, and the dollar was
2009. You visited
2009 exactly, and the dollar was very weak compared to euro, and I was like, oh my god, America is so cheap. As a tourist, I was like, holy crap, it's so cheap. With my euro being worth almost twice as much as a dollar at that time. I was like, oh my god, I barely spent any money. And despite we went to the diner every morning and eating pancakes and stuff, it was like, oh my god, this is incredible.
That's how I felt about Canada in the early 2000s, or late 90s. You'd go there and, everything on the border of Canada in Toronto and whatnot, they take just American money. And it was so much... the American dollar was worth so much more than the Canadian dollar. And it was like, I'd go there with, $15 in my pocket. And it's like, I'll buy a house, and now it's like, the dollar is worth nothing anymore.
Right.
And again, there's only one dude to blame. We can go into that. I got lots of things to complain about with that shit going on now, but
you got your political interview.
Yes, I did. All right.
Woo!
Well, then let's head over and talk to Taylor.
Exactly. Today we have another guest, and today we actually have Taylor Lorenz. Um, and you came in the picture because you do a podcast and you also went back to freelance journalism. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure is all ours. Right. Um, so so you came in the picture because YouTube, the algorithm, actually suggested to me Power User, which is your podcast, and and it happens that you covered some topics there that were pretty well, I would say unprominent, not so prominent. Like for example, that returning of Gamergate, you know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So perhaps let's start a bit with how did you actually start into journalism? When I did my research, I learned you actually were a blogger first, kind
Yes.
of a freelance journalism, and then you actually turned into American mass media journalism, mainstream journalism, and then now you went back to freelance journalism. So perhaps you can explain a bit about your journey there.
Yeah. I started as a blogger back when I started because I'm old.
Whoa.
This was 15 years ago. So there wasn't really like the social media landscape that we have now where you can really monetize independently. So I became a kind of a popular blogger, semi popular, at a small audience at least. And people sort of liked my work and thought that I had a good eye for news. And at the time, really the only thing that you could do if you were a successful blogger was sort of parlay that into a career. So I was working in social media, doing social media content for media organizations for years. And then I started writing more for those media organizations. And then, my editor retired last year, and he was the reason I was still working at an old school media company. And the Washington Post made a bunch of changes, and I was like, gosh, I was just looking around at the industry and I was like, okay, there's nowhere that I want to work. I just
Mhm.
want to go do my own thing. This feels like being on the Titanic to sort of stay in legacy media at this point. So I went back to full-time independent, and I've been doing it for about, I was like mid-October, I think is when I went.
Mm.
So I don't know, 7 or 8 months now.
Wow. And well, I mentioned it, you often cover unpopular topics, but also while you especially were at the traditional media, you also are kind of the bridge between Gen Z and old guys who don't understand how TikTok works and the youth and so on. And so what made you digging into, well, the last generation actually?
Well, I don't approach technology that way. It's interesting. I write about all people's use of technology. I write a lot about boomer using technology. So I just kind of write about how different use cases of technology, how different communities are using it. And when I started, I was writing a lot about how millennials use technology as a millennial, because Gen Z was not even. I think they were still in diapers. And so now, I definitely include Gen Z in my coverage, and Gen Alpha. I've written about how children are interacting with like AI toys and things like that. So I really try to cover just how people use technology as a whole and how different ages and demographics and groups interact with the online world.
I see. So um yeah, well, I mean, we mentioned it a couple of times with other guests in this podcast here that there's a general perspective that kind of a computer literacy is having, I would say, a hard time with with the latest generation.
You're
Because
talking about how trying to teach younger people now how to use technology is the same as trying to teach your grandparents to use technology.
Exactly, because they are so much used to touch screens and so on, they don't know how to use a keyboard or a mouse, you know. I mean, there is this meme of this baby that tries to use a book and then swipe the pages.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how we adapt to different interaction design, right? I mean, there was when I was younger, I remember seeing like I don't know, those BuzzFeed videos or some viral video where they were taking younger people that grew up using touchpad telephones and trying to showing them a dial telephone where I guess you had to like
Oh,
spin it in a certain way.
the rotary dial.
Yeah, exactly, which of course people our age don't know how to use because those were obsolete by then. So I think that technology and user interfaces are always adapting, and of course you have these young people that grow up that are sort of native to the current interaction design, and so they sort of are confused by these old systems, which is always pretty amusing. But I mean, I just think that technology is going to continue to evolve, and I think by the next generation we'll have like AR smart glasses, right? And people will be interacting in different ways, maybe with their hands. And so, I like reporting on those shifts.
Hmm. Now it would interest me. How is it for the society around you? I mean, friends, parents. I don't know. Is it sometimes that you think like, oh my god, it's so easy. Why are you even having troubles with that? Or are you generally patient? And are you the person in your family troubleshooting everybody's equipment? Because I'm that person in my family, unfortunately, you know. So.
I think my family, you know what? They really don't ask me for help that much. I think my family doesn't have social media. So, my parents aren't trying to figure out how to post on TikTok or anything like
Okay.
that. They use their computers for email and to read the news, and that's about it. So, I might have helped my dad convert a PDF or something one time, but
I
overall,
see.
they sort of just keep to themselves.
They leave you alone.
Mhm.
That's good for you. That's good for
Mhm.
you. So when you invite or when you decide to talk to people, because on your podcast, especially Power User, you have a lot of variety of guests. Sometimes you have fellow journalists,
Yes.
from Washington Post or whatsoever, or sometimes you have tech YouTuber or other politicians. How does that work? Do you wake up one day, hit your head, and then have an idea who to invite next, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, it's pretty week to week. It's a weekly podcast, so it's really just whoever I want to talk to that week and who
Okay.
happens to be available with 24 hours notice. So, yeah, it ends up being a lot
Wow.
of other journalists, I think, cuz journalists are generally available and able to talk about the news. But I try to have other people on, academics as you mentioned, political people. Yeah, I try to have a good mix, but yeah.
I mean, especially if you have tech YouTubers or people from the tech world that are not into journalism, sometimes from my experience, sometimes it takes weeks to get even an answer or
Yeah.
to find an appointment because people are normally pretty busy.
Yes, that's the biggest challenge. That's why my Friday series, I started to just do more solo podcasts. So it's just me talking now, because it's really, really hard to book people. And it's hard for me to even find time to record. Like I have no time. I work often until 2 in the morning. I worked until 2 in the morning last night, got up at 7 a.m. and have not had a single moment to even check my email yet today, because I've been on back to back stuff. So yeah, I'm trying to say no to more things myself. But I think
Really?
as a podcaster, like, I'm so empathetic to people trying to book me on podcasts because I have to book other people on podcasts, so I try to do it, but it's scheduling is never fun for anyone.
I thought it would be interesting, because you are, totally special in this field, because normally, um, when you talk to people in tech, they keep to themselves, while you are trying to understand the next generation coming after us and what is their drive, their force, and not only that, but also you touch a lot of political issues, which probably AJ would like, because he also tries to put in one or another political nuance into this podcast, and I try not to be too American political,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I write about how the internet is affecting the world. And so I write about how the internet affects business, culture, music, fashion, like everything. And that includes politics. So I think that the internet is radically reshaping our political system, especially here in America, because the American political system is so fused with like American values of like fame and attention and spectacle and all of that. And so I think that I covered Trump's first 2016 run. I was on that campaign trail and covered all of that, and I've covered his rise, and I've covered just Trump a lot, and also a lot of these more sort of like internet native politicians that have leveraged online communities to put themselves in power. So yeah, it just kind of goes along with my beat.
it's also interesting how things get how to say, how things touch into politics. I mean, for example, video games was a
Yeah.
big topic in the last months, especially about diversity inside the game companies.
Mhm.
And I was like, me as a gamer, do I really care? Uh, you know,
Yeah.
so I was like, why is this Gamergate thing even coming up again? I
Well,
mean,
it's intentional. It's intentional. It's an intentional, and I've covered this, but this is a very intentional effort by the far right to co-opt these communities, these online communities around gaming or certain forms of entertainment, and radicalize them and say, "Oh, you know why you don't like that game? You know why that game isn't good anymore? It's not because the gaming company was bought out by private equity and they gutted all of the resources that went into making it good. It's actually because they hired too many women or whatever." And of course, this is nonsense, but it's very effective, especially in radicalizing young men.
yeah, and I remember when we started this podcast, one of our first episodes 10 years ago was actually the Fractals with um, that all female gaming group, well, established by Ubisoft. And one of those topics that were on the forbidden list were actually the original Gamergate. Like
Mm.
they couldn't talk about it, so I was like, okay,
Well, they didn't want to talk about it.
right,
I think because
exactly.
anytime you talk about it, you get a lot of hate.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. I mean, the good thing is about being an independent hobby podcast. It doesn't really matter, So, but it's interesting because suddenly you find yourself in discussions like. I play modern games as well. For example, Star Wars Outlaws, and there is a long thread on Steam about how ugly the main character is.
Oh God.
And I
that
was
thing.
like, "Oh my god!"
That-
That was my last thought when I started playing the game. How pretty the main character is, I just want to have a good time, a good story, and feel involved in a Star Wars
and it's such a
Star
double
Wars
standard
universe.
too, because there's so
Right.
many games where the main character is
Yes.
male, and there are some ratchet characters in these games, and there's no problem with that.
Right. So it's like, oh my god, I don't know. It's just wild sometimes,
Yeah.
And then things are pushed up to proportions like this will be the demise of Ubisoft, and they will shut down and whatever, and so this is why I find it pretty interesting that you covers those topics where other journalists are saying like, perhaps it's too controversial. We just want to be more mainstream
And not without
friendly.
controversy though, too, or not that's the wrong word. Not without like the consequences though, because you've been targeted plenty of times.
Yeah, I'm always targeted by these
Yeah.
people. I just don't care. I just don't care. I just feel like, their whole goal is to try to intimidate women especially and other people into silence, and they want to terrorize you and they want to make you scared of talking about it. And I think that's very silly. And I think actually most normal people who game, at least my friends, like they're not like that. Like they're not so obsessed with like, oh, there's this character that is not as hot as I think they should be. Like it's just silly. And I want gamers to also understand what again what private equity is doing to gaming. Like there are like market forces and economic forces that are making games worse in certain ways. And we should keep the focus on that, because I think the people the billionaires and millionaires that run these private equity firms or these, corporate overlords that really are just sort of like squeezing these companies for profit. And I've talked to so many game developers and workers that are like, gosh, I'm barely scraping by, right? And I'm getting attacked online for this game. And the reality is they just don't have resources. So I want people to keep the focus on the rich bosses and those people. Those are the people. If you feel like your
Right.
video game experience is degrading or everything's about, charging you money or whatever, like it's because of those people. It's not because of some like, trans like random game dev somewhere. Also, we want more people to game. I don't know what you
Yeah,
guys like,
right.
these people want gaming to be this thing where it's like only, cisgender white young men. And it's like, I'm sorry, gaming is like the most popular form of entertainment. It's literally more popular than movies. So like
Right,
the
yeah.
cat's out of the bag. Like, and women want games, gay people want games. There should be gaming for everyone.
Right. Uh,
Especially like, in a multiplayer thing, like
Yeah.
the idea that it would all just be kind of homogenous. Like if I want to talk to like just straight white dudes, I can go outside. They're over there.
Yeah.
Like that's not
right. Yeah. And interesting that AJ mentioned also, by the way, online harassment and being attacked for fake or whatever. Actually, I had to block some people on our YouTube from commenting because we had some interviews over the phone, and people were actually saying those
oh.
are AI generated, and it was like, oh my god,
I thought
are
you
you
were going to talk
serious?
about when they tried to get us censored because we said something bad about Trump.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, all right, we're doing something right then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally you're
yeah.
on the right side.
Yeah,
Um,
suddenly you see your podcast on iTunes is flagged for for explicit, and I'm like, what what explicit did we mention? Uh, well,
yeah, it's frustrating, but I just think it's important to talk about these things and remain outspoken and stand up for what you believe in. Life is short. You might as well say what you think.
hmm. So let me ask you, what is that topic you mentioned, perhaps recently, that you are the most proud of personally?
Gosh, well, lately I started a series that's also on my like podcast feed called Free Speech Friday, where I talk
Mm.
about civil liberties online, and I try to educate people about tech policy, which is something not many people care about. But I'm trying to get them to care about, because I think so much of our online experience is shaped by laws and by these political efforts in our country to regulate platforms in certain ways, silence LGBTQ people, silence political speech of all sorts. And this is actually something that the right and the left are aligned on in this country, is silencing online speech. And I, as a journalist, rely on free speech and free expression online to do my job. And so I've been trying to educate people about these really dangerous laws, things like the Kids Online Safety Act, or these efforts to revoke Section 230, which is this sort of landmark piece of legislation that protects free speech online, essentially, or these age verification rules, which are
I saw
horrifying.
that. I
Horrifying.
saw that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Because the goal is not the goal with age verification. I have an hour-long video explaining this on my channel. It's to tie your offline identity to your online behavior, and it's terrifying for journalists, activists, especially at a time when speech is being criminalized. They're trying to deport people over speech. We're giving the government more and more power to surveil online speech, and I think that's incredibly terrifying.
Yeah, we did we did a series a while back with the uncensored library. It was in
Yeah,
Minecraft. Yeah, and
yeah,
that's the kind of thing where you see like other countries where they've they've clamped down so tight on any information getting out there, on any kind of speech at all, that
Yeah.
people are resorting to using something like that to skirt those laws.
And America is going that way. That's what's so scary. We're seeing the banning of books. We're seeing, I mean,
Mhm.
I focus a lot about online speech, but offline speech rights are being dismantled. So I think this is something that everybody needs to get involved with. And you need to realize what is happening, because they're not coming out and saying, oh, yeah, we're going to restrict your online speech. What they're saying is, we want to make the internet safer for children. It's so
Mm,
dangerous for children.
mm.
Never mind. These people don't care about child safety. Okay. They don't want to
Yeah.
pursue, you know,
Right,
gun
right.
legislation to ensure that kids, can go to school without getting shot. Like, they don't care about any of that. They don't want to, provide more universal school lunches or something to make sure kids are happy and fed. No, they're just claiming that they want to quote unquote protect the kids, and that the social media is bad and evil and rotting their brains. None of this is true. Um, when in fact, it's this very crucial place for identity and self-expression. To develop. So yeah, anyway, that's what you hear. So anytime you hear people, lawmakers saying that they're, cracking down on the internet in some way or regulating social media to protect the kids, that's not what's happening. It's censorship, and that should terrify anyone.
Yeah.
Hmm, hmm.
I feel like the people that get impacted more by like social media and everything, because I mean, kids will have grown up with this, so it's just kind of the way it is. And like, I don't see, again, you're talking, there's age verification for porn sites, so it's like, okay, well, that happens, then they just either find a way around it, or you just revert to the box of porn in the woods like people our age had.
Yeah.
But the ones really that are impacted by social media, as far as like rotting their brains, seems to be like the older generation.
Yeah. It's the
Even,
boomers.
yeah,
No one's more.
even us, our generation,
Mhm.
the Gen X or whichever it is, I see so many people that I've known my whole life that have always been completely rational individuals that are now completely off the cliff because they see nonsense online.
Yeah. And they have no media literacy. And that is actually
Right.
why we want to expose kids at a very young age to technology. And we actually want children to use these platforms as young as possible. Um, Under the supervision of adults that theoretically should have media literacy, where they can learn to use these platforms. If you keep the longer you keep kids off the internet, the worse their media literacy outcomes. So the less able they are to identify misinformation, the less able they are to tell basically fact from fiction, the more likely they are to fall for sort of radicalized propaganda. So we really do want kids online. We want kids on social media to navigate these spaces, to understand, hey, by the way, like, this is what you're saying is not true, or here's how to navigate this, or here's how to explore your identity and find yourself. Like, so many kids, they before the internet, they were really bound by their circumstances, and maybe they were gay, or they had special interests that nobody around them had, and that made them feel weird and isolated. The internet connects people, and it can be a very positive force for kids. That doesn't mean that you have to sit your kid in front of like a skibbity toilet all day and just let them scroll, but like, teach them to use the internet in a positive way. I
Right.
think it's really important. It's also just important for the job market.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
and I mean that in the sense of, like, not that we need kids to be online to participate in the job market, but that kids need to have digital literacy to ultimately have better career outcomes.
Right.
And also keep the spicy pictures away from social media, because your potential future employer might actually know how to use the internet. You never know, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think, to me, I hope that we can destigmatize a lot of that, because I think that, like, young people should have room to make mistakes, or to
mm,
share something that they regret when they were a child, and not be held
unfortunately,
to that.
that's not the reality, but I
Well,
see
it is
what
a
you mean.
reality, I think, that we're working towards. And I think that we have a much more permissive system even now than 10 years ago. I think there is a lot more understanding of, like, okay, something you posted when you were 15 years old is not representative of your beliefs as a 30-year-old, right? And
Right,
so I hope that we
right.
can continue to have that. I think it's actually the boomers, like you're mentioning, that have that rigid view. But I think most
Right.
people that grew up with the internet recognize that we all evolve over time, and our belief systems evolve over time, and our judgment evolves over time, theoretically.
Right.
This is also,
But
by the way, an argument for ephemeral media. I also think that this default permanent, default public sort of
Right.
modes of social media are on the way out. I don't think most of consumers want those for those reasons, because you sort of are like, well, I don't want everything I post to be public and out there forever. That's why you see so many young people archiving their Instagram grid posts and things like that.
Well, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you are one person yourself who sometimes removes posts, and I see
Oh,
you
all the
have
time.
been
I
you
delete.
have
I
been
have my.
criticized for that a lot by other media.
Oh, really? Who criticized? What did they say?
I don't remember actually, but I think in one interview, the person who interviewed you wasn't so happy about this fact.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the only sort of backlash that I can remember getting is my tweets like auto delete, or they used to at least.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
you like.
That was
Well,
it.
that was
Exactly.
PewDiePie. Yeah. So
Yeah.
PewDiePie, who's a big YouTuber, after I did a very critical, I posted an article about Mr. Beast and his labor violations and his labor practices, and how Mr. Beast was essentially exploiting his workers. And at the time, nobody was talking about this. I broke the news of a lot of those labor violations years ago in this big New York Times story. And I had reported very critically on Mr. Beast. And the YouTuber PewDiePie made a video at one point that was sort of like mad about some of my critical reporting on Mr. Beast. And he was like, and she herself deletes her old tweets or something. Now, one thing that I find very funny is that after all of this came out publicly and all of the YouTubers realized that actually Mr. Beast really was doing bad things, PewDiePie himself took down that video. So I would tell all of these content creators that you guys take down stuff all the time. You private videos all the
Right.
time, as you should. And I think, removing old content doesn't mean that you're ashamed of what you said. I stand by absolutely everything I've ever said. Like, I would justify it or maybe say, listen, I don't believe that anymore. Here's how my thinking has evolved. But I've never said anything problematic that I've been sort of quote unquote canceled for anything. The reason that I delete my old tweets is because I had personal information on there, and I have a stalker who has
Ooh.
terrorized me and hired people to photograph me outside my house and showed up at events wearing a t-shirt with my face on it, who's so
Wow.
delusional. And when I first joined Twitter, I was posting stuff about my family and my friends and other personal information over the years. So I don't want stalkers and bad actors to have easy access to years and years of personal information, because I might be tagged in an image with a friend or post something that at the time seems benign, but 4 years later that will be used in a negative way. And so that is why I think everyone should protect their privacy, and I'm a big proponent of online privacy.
So I'm lucky that you gave me your contact details in case something urgent happens or whatever you said. So thank you for the trust. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, I totally get you. You know, despite I'm not a woman, I have some people on my iPhone block list that
We
that
all
I
do.
don't want to call me
There you
because they are just not nice people. Let's put it that way. You know, so
I think we all have people like that. I think that the internet, again, I write about politics, I write about controversial issues, or things that are being made controversial, and so I always have a lot of people that'll sort of try to do that. I'm a very private person generally, and I give my phone number out to people I trust. Of course, like, I'm not going to like live in a bubble, but at the same time, I don't want like 15 years of posts public in a way, especially with like facial recognition. I don't know. I think it's good to be private. And also that's why I'm against data brokers, and I think we need data privacy legislation as well.
But to not be focused too much, you not only cover internet topics, but you also made an episode recently about the Waymo taxi cabs being burned down on the streets.
Yes.
And I thought like, wow, that's a pretty interesting topic, because it has to do with the fear of modern technology. And it's interesting because it's a topic that I spoke with so many people about. For example, when I did an historical interview with
Wait, that was they weren't burned because people were afraid of them.
They were burned because they surveil people, because they capture footage at protests. And that footage can be used by the police.
But didn't someone order them and then they just used them as a barricade? Like,
pardon? Didn't they what?
Didn't someone just order a Waymo and it just drove in and they used it as a barricade? They burned it and
I don't
made
think they
sure
were
it was.
barricading anything, but people
Oh,
were
wow.
calling them in to burn them.
Oh,
There's
okay,
been a
okay.
lot of backlash towards Waymo, actually more in San Francisco. I said this in my video. People in LA actually really like Waymos as a whole, but in the context of protests, they
Ah,
don't like them because
Mm.
what the cars do is capture tons of data on everything
Yeah.
happening around
that is
them,
that is
and then they
right.
give that
Okay.
to the police.
Mm.
So that's what people feel, where they feel like, okay, these are essentially police like surveillance vehicles, and when they're in the protest environment, like we don't want them around. And it's sort of also a commentary on like backlash towards tech and big tech and this sort of
Mm.
what I thought was very funny, and I didn't get into it as much in that video, is I am so interested in how people view different sort of technology around the, in public life. And like you see people like the bird scooters, people hate the bird scooters, they throw them into the river, whatever. But and the Waymos are obviously doing surveillance, but another thing that has a camera on it is actually those food delivery robots.
Yes.
And people feel very protective over those. And I interviewed the head of product at one of these companies, and I was asking him, like, how do you design it in this way? They actually designed it when they put it out, the Coco robot, when they put it out for test drive, they realized that people felt they protective of almost like an animal, and they make it look like a little animal. They have like the little eyes, or like the two, I guess like these two circles that make it kind of look like a little eyes. Um, but so those food delivery robots were also going through various protests, and people were stepping aside and giving them the right of way
Whoa.
and not viewing them the same way. And I think that that's interesting. I think part of it is because they're carrying a person's order, and so people feel sort of some like sense of
Yeah.
like, well, let's not mess this person's like food. Maybe they need their dinner or whatever. But also people just don't seem to like hate them in the same way that they hate the Waymos. And I think it's funny because they're also they're not working with the police necessarily, so there's that, but they're also, surveilling neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good that we talked about that, because I totally got
And
the
they're not
video
working with the
wrong then.
police yet, because
They're not working the police yet. I think
Yeah.
that we could see an instance where the police sees that footage.
Right.
Mm, mm.
And it's
Ooh.
not even to say that the company itself is bad or the product is bad. It's just something that
No,
that,
they're required to by law often
Right,
turn
exactly.
over this
Right.
footage. So it's the police state.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And that's fine in the context of a hit and run or something, right? Like I think actually a lot of us
Right.
would be comfortable in certain instances having footage turned over, or if it like witnessed a murder or something. But I
Mhm.
think the concern is like when you have these like ambient vehicles roaming around protest areas, like
Right.
that they're
Yeah.
basically just surveilling protests.
Whoa. I
Yeah,
have to
it's
admit.
interesting. There's an interesting dichotomy in all of this, in that, sorry, I've always thought that, like, the process for like kind of the world devolving back into, like, say, like a World War II or something like that, would be more difficult with the internet around, because again, like, Jörg is one of my best friends. He's in Germany.
Thank you.
I know people all over everyone kind of knows people from all over now. So it's not like,
Right.
it would be more difficult to like go to, have like an all-out war against a country where most of the people in the US know people from there. And the information from the things that have happened in the past is so like widely available. And yet it's I don't know what, like, is there something that is like inherent in this that kind of makes people, maybe people just, I don't know exactly the words to say it, but it seems like we're slipping down that path way easier than I would have thought that we could.
Yeah. Well, I think, listen, I think you could, sorry.
No problem. It's not live. We can cut that out.
Yeah.
I think you can look at what's happening in Palestine right now and actually see that. And the reason, as we know, the reason the US tried to ban TikTok and still might ban TikTok is because people were connecting with others in Gaza. Mark Warner and Rep Gallagher, who co-sponsored that bill to ban TikTok, came out at the Munich Security Conference and said this is the reason why they wanted to ban TikTok, is because or were able to get the TikTok ban through, is because lawmakers don't want Americans learning about people in other parts of the world that are considered our quote unquote enemies or who we want to bomb and destroy, and realizing that those are also people and that those people are also like human beings that you might have a lot in common with and you might be friends with. And so you're seeing that now with the globalization of the internet, where they're trying to balkanize it and basically do what China did, right? China did, where it's like cut off. We'll have our own American version of TikTok. We'll have our own American thing. And that way we can't connect with people in the Middle East or Muslim countries or the outside world, or in Pakistan or whatever, and realize that actually we all, a lot of us have a lot more in common than we think. And
Right.
so I think I think that's the problem. And I think that like the only reason, you were saying of like why it's happening so easily, I think it's because people in power also that run these platforms also recognize they want to sow discord. They don't want people to come together and connect and have a beautiful, happy life. They want people fighting so that you generate more engagement, so that you can monetize that engagement and so on. And so I think they also kind of, they don't necessarily want to incentivize building positive cross-cultural communities, especially places like X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. Like, Elon Musk does not want that to be used for world peace. He wants to manufacture consent for, horrible things. So, but that's why it's so important to protect the internet and protect speech. You see a lot of people on the left now say, oh, well, the whole internet's bad, and so we should just ban it and keep everyone offline and they should touch grass. No, we want to live in a more interconnected world. We want to live in a more tech forward world. Like, technology is amazing and we can have a better world through technology. It's just the people in power and the people wielding these tools and the profit incentives are currently warped. But I think it's really concerning because I think that it sort of seems controversial now to be pro technology because it's interpreted as being like pro like evil Silicon Valley billionaires. And it's like, no, I think a lot of us that got into technology young or were there for like the early stages of the internet are like, well, no, actually, like there is a good it is like the internet and tech can be used for good. And it's just that it's gone off the rails a little bit lately because of all these billionaires.
I mean,
Yeah, well, for a lot of people, the internet is Facebook, or
Right.
it is
Yes.
X,
Which is a
Twitter,
problem.
whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like there
Or
is
Google.
no right. The Facebook or the internet as an entity doesn't exist outside of this one thing that you go to and get all of your information from there.
Yeah.
Whereas,
And I think
like,
that's also, not to interrupt you, but I think that's
okay.
why it's so important also to get more people into like indie web spaces or forums, or just like I encourage them to really explore the breadth of the internet and not just spend all their time wrapped in social media.
Right.
Yeah, blogs and things from back in the way back when. I feel like they're kind of making a bit of a comeback. People are starting to do that again.
I'm still running the same blog since 20 years.
Yeah, well, you're
Wow,
you.
there you go.
So I'm still doing it, But it's interesting that you mention it because I think there was a story a while ago where somebody, a teenager from Turkey on Discord, was actually having a friendly conversation with a Western woman, and that actually caused a turmoil, and they actually banned Discord in Turkey and stuff. And I was like, that's wild. But I'm not sure if that ban is still active. I think it was only temporarily. But banning internet or certain pages is still a thing when elections happen in certain countries. So
Yeah.
it's actually wild.
Yeah, I just truly believe that we need a more free and open web, and I think that we need a less profit-driven internet as well. Like, I think the profit incentives by these giant companies are often at odds with user experience.
Where do you think where do you think we'll end up with as far as like AI goes? Because I keep seeing these videos now where it's like a news thing, and 3 sentences are like, I'm not real.
Yeah.
And and I appreciate that people are making that to show that, like, hey, don't trust anything. But for every one of those videos, there's one that doesn't say, I'm not real.
Right. I think that, again, this is why we need people to have media literacy and why media literacy is important, because most people will fall for propaganda. And I think AI is going to it's going to be like gasoline on a fire. It's going to make it a lot worse. So I don't think it's going to get better, but I think it could get worse before it gets better. Overall, I think AI I don't want to say it's inevitable, but there's just so much money behind sort of like accelerating that stuff. And in some ways, like AI can be used for incredible things, right? Like cancer research and all this stuff. But again, because our internet is primarily driven by profit, and because we have this hyper capitalist economy that these companies are operating in, I think that it's going to incentivize a lot of bad stuff. And I think that the solution to that is to not like ban AI or try to like put the genie back in the bottle. It's to build a economy and an internet with different incentives that aren't driven towards profit, at any cost.
Hmm. And how
But
would
at
you
the moment,
like? Oh,
sorry.
yeah. What are you gonna say?
I just wanted to say, right now the problem is the more complex AI is getting, the more stupid it is, the more inaccurate at the moment. Just wanted to say, because
the more
it really
stupid and
is.
yet confident. It's also very
I
confident.
mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's,
know
it's
for
actually
certain.
it's actually true. ChatGPT, the latest version, is more hallucinating than the
Yeah.
previous versions. Just wanted to say that. Sorry for interrupting you, AJ.
No, I was just gonna say. I was just gonna ask. There is a big proliferation of nonsense news in the world. So when I get up in the morning, I'll go to my thing on my phone where it kind of aggregates news.
Yeah.
Half of those things are nonsense. I don't necessarily think that they're AI generated, but it's stuff that is it's clickbaity, but it's on actual like news websites. It's not like just some back alley thing, that happens to be talking.
Yeah.
The one I thought about, because I just saw it today, just this morning, was the dumbest thing. It was something like beloved actor 94 opens up about his new health issues, and it was a picture of William Shatner looking like a decrepit old man, and dude's had tinnitus for 60 years. That's all it is. He mentioned it somewhere, and it's like there's so much stuff, and that's not that doesn't have anything to
But
do
that's
with, like,
about
real.
it. Just goes back to the profit incentive. The reason that they're doing that clickbait is because they want to get maximum traffic, low quality traffic, to monetize those page views to make money. And I don't believe that we should have such a profit driven news environment. I think also a huge amount of corporate media exists to prop up corporate and institutional power. They're pro capitalism, pro business, pro corporate power. This is why you see like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, like they just launder billionaire boss like corporate power talking points. They are never going to they're never going to have the interests of working people, the working class at heart. That they're very antagonistic to anyone who even speaks or challenges power, because their goal is to uphold structures of power and uphold systems of institutional power. So I just like there's so many problems with the media for those reasons. And what I tell people who are, fed up with those systems is like find independent journalists that are doing the work, that aren't going to clickbait, that are like really out there putting together, whether they're aggregating news or doing original reporting, like just support those people directly, because they're the antidote to this broken media ecosystem.
And there's there are caveats to that as well, because we saw this happened a lot with print publishing, like books. Amazon came along, and now anybody can, you write a book, you can put it on, print on demand at Amazon, and the whole structure for like publishing and editing and whatnot that used to go into it is kind of vanishing. So there is a flood, a deluge of garbage. Every so often, there's also a lot of good stuff that would not have been published otherwise, under the traditional things. And with news, with the media, I feel like there's a lot of that too. There's some really good journalism that happens that the big media companies aren't involved with. But then there's also a lot of nonsense that gets out there too, because no one's regulating
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I would say, though, is that there's a lot of nonsense in legacy media, too. And I think a lot of this panic that people have over like, oh, anyone can have a voice on the internet. It's like, okay, but you guys have been publishing cranks in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal for years. Like you guys literally manufactured consent for the war in Iraq and lied to the public about God knows how many things. Like they continue to lie to the public about things. So I think like there is no magic bullet. There is no silver bullet. I don't think you can trust one or the other. I don't think everyone should trust every independent journalist. I think probably the majority of them are not like acting in, you know, good faith in certain ways. They're like influencers or whatever. But I do think that we should try to find reliable voices that you can trust and support them directly. Sorry for the alarm. I have to go in 10 minutes to go on another call.
No problem. Yeah.
All right. Well, then, awesome. Okay, so where can people go to find out about what you're doing? And
subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Taylor Lorenz on YouTube. I'm trying really hard to do YouTube. So I'm a newer channel, but I'm there. And then usermag.co is my Substack. So that's usermag.co. And that's where I write about all of these issues and more. And I do a lot of like news roundups too. It's like a online culture newsletter that keeps you in the loop with what's going on online.
Excellent. We'll put links to everything in the podcast description down below.
I mean, 148 subscribers and almost 200 videos. That's quite impressive, actually. A lot of output. Yeah.
A lot of output. I don't know how successful a lot of it is, but I'm trying.
I mean, I found you, and normally when people ask me like, what other podcasts do you listen to, and I say none. I spend so much time doing this that normally I'm not listening to other people's content. So that means when I sit down and listen or watch a 1 hour interview you did, that's actually a compliment, because that means it's worth it. And that's also why I give you sometimes some feedback, because I think it's such great content, and compared to other people who sugarcoat their interviews, you actually take it to the bone and are truthful about it, even though when sometimes it's kind of hurts, but I mean, such topics are important. If nobody talks about it, who else would, so that's it. Right, so that's why I'm glad you took the time today to talk to us for an hour, and hopefully down the road we can catch up and can follow with you in a bit of time with what you're up to in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thanks for sitting with us.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.